So today I want to talk to you about what kind of church is Old Donation. I get that question all the time. What kind of church is Old Donation? And my smart aleck answer is, well, it's old. After all, 1637, there's not too much that has survived from that period. But, as Jesus says, even the gates of hell will not prevail against the church. And so we are a church that has persevered. And so in this age of COVID, where other churches are struggling, we recognize that we've survived wars, fires, and floods, and COVID is nothing compared to that. But what kind of church is the Episcopal Church is usually what the people mean. And they say, your worship looks like it's from the Roman Catholic Church, but I see a woman priest at the altar, and it seems like there's more joy in what you're doing. What's with this? Are you Catholic or Protestant? And my answer is always, yes, we are both. And that's actually intentional, but also an accident of history, and we would say the Holy Spirit truly at work. We are a bridge church, which seems in many ways to have the best elements of both the Catholic tradition and the Reformed or Protestant traditions. I always want to argue that this is not Henry VIII's church as much as it is Elizabeth I's church. Because at the time in the 16th century, when the church was getting its formation, Elizabeth knew that in the continent, religious wars were dividing people, nations, and churches. In England, Elizabeth wanted to create both a nation and a church that could stay at unity with itself. And so we ended up with a church that had the language of the people as primary because the church believed that God speaks to every individual. The second thing was, if we're really going to be people who God speaks to, we ought to all have access to the Bible and to good education. And so we've placed a high emphasis on education not only of children, but all the way through life for adult education as well. And the Bible has to be accessible and understandable because, in fact, every one of us is going to have a voice in this new church. The third thing was we recognized as one of the primary reforms of that era in the 16th century, we had an emphasis on grace, not works, as being the source of how we obtain our relationship with God. And then fourth, the priests were allowed to be married because they should be people of the people, not set apart and cloistered in a way that they don't understand real life. And so language, the Bible, grace, and priests who are of the real people were the primary changes made at the time of the Reformation. That said, that if in fact the Holy Spirit speaks to every person and they all have a voice in the church, that means we flipped the governance issues upside down. And so instead of a top-down hierarchical church, we ended up one with a flat sort of governance. While we have bishops, priests, and deacons, lay people are primary in terms of the membership of the church, and we give them just as much authority as clergy. As a result, our church has tended to be more aware of what God might be doing at the moment. So we have a higher sense of appreciating science, history, social and cultural issues. We tend to be more willing to let the Spirit speak to us. All of that means that sometimes the church is a little more crazy than you might expect. But if everyone has a voice, you know it sometimes gets loud. All families where everyone has a say sometimes have those arguments, and Episcopalians are famous for working out their faith by arguing one position against the other until we get to the point where we can say, now we can all agree. It's not always orderly, but we're more likely to be responsive to the needs of the world in the movement of God. So are we Catholic or Protestant? Yes, we are. Maybe the best of both. Come and visit us. Come and let's have this conversation go further.